So you've submitted phase 0, you've submitted phase 1 and 2, you've been given full approval, your design phase is done, and you're now onto the actual summative project itself. You're ready to start coding. Now, for some of you, and especially in the grade 12, hopefully you've done some actual coding design documents, whether that is a UML, pseudocode, flowchart, whatever it is. Hopefully you've put some thought on this, because your project is going to be big. Even as an individual, your project is going to be big. So don't just jump in and pray for the best, because that's going to cause you more headaches than it's worth. So for this document, it's fairly short, so I am going to read most of this and just make some comments as we go, and hopefully this video will be a lot shorter than the previous two. Sorry about that. Anyways, so at this point everything is done. I just want to go over a few tips to make sure that you're on track and everything is in line, especially when it comes to the groups, but I want to go over a few of the details. Number one thing, back up your project daily. There are no extensions or allowances for this problem. Basically, your ISU, your final project, is due at the end of the course. There is no room for an extension. There's no more time left. That's it. So it's handed in on time. That's it. Whatever you got done, you submit. Okay? If you have problems with your flash drive or whatnot, that's why you're making daily backups. Okay? Do not make daily backups on the same flash drive. Make backups on an alternate computer, whether that's a hard drive or a cloud environment, maybe Google Drive or something like that. There's so many options out there, so use them. Google Drive is a fantastic one. There's also some source control systems. If you're working in Unity, that has the new collaborative cloud-based source control where you can share your projects with your teammates, and it's stored on the cloud, so whether you're working at home or whether you're working at school, you still have access to the exact same files. It's great. So anyways, to go over a few other things, also when you're working in a group, you need to find a way to share your stuff. So again, Google Drive, Dropbox, the Unity Cloud collaboration. When you're sharing, you don't want to be passing flash drives all the time, and somehow you need to be able to have a master copy of the product. So when you're working like this, you should have one master that is not touched. So only when you're happy with changes, you overwrite the master with the new safe changes you've tested and it works. And then you leave it alone. You make a copy of that, and everybody starts working from that copy again. And then you keep going until you're ready to try and integrate it back to the master. And you keep doing this, this whole iterative process to make sure that you don't wreck the master. It's kind of like your backup, so that one never gets broken. If you're working in a group, big tidbit, have a quick 5-minute meeting every day at the beginning of class just to see if everybody's on task and they're going to finish things on time. Give each other deadlines, because you're going to be working on components that everybody else is dependent on. So if you don't get your chunk done, that might mean some other people can't even start their task. So you got to give each other deadlines, maybe elect a leader who's going to try and enforce this, a project manager of some kind. Police yourselves. If you have a group member not pulling their weight, take care of it immediately. I can't help you. You've chosen those groups. You should be choosing those groups not based on friendship. You should be choosing these groups based on people you can work with. Don't just work with your friends because you feel you owe them something. You don't owe them anything. You do your own work. It's your mark at the end of the course, just like it's theirs. So make sure you choose your groups wisely and don't choose dead weight. Groups can't be changed after they're set, so get them to pull their weight, motivate them, whatever you need to do. Alright, so project implementation. This is where the coding begins. Get everything done. What's going to happen is over the course of the project, you're going to be subjected to 3 progress checks, which are going to represent 6 out of 36 marks on your final project, which is pretty significant. So 6 out of 2 marks per progress check. If you miss your progress check, you don't get credit for it. You lose it. So make sure that you're there when it's time to actually meet with me. In that progress check, basically I'm just going to be checking against your priority list that you set in the document, and how far along you are, how much you've done. I'll be making detailed notes, so when the next time I come and meet you again, you should have an adequate amount of progression from the previous meeting. Okay, and everything's going to be timing based. So if I see you're not moving along far enough, you're not going to get your full credit for your marks. It is a subjective mark out of 2. So you need to demonstrate your progress since the last check. So when I come meet with you, I'll tell you the day before that I'm going to meet, or maybe a couple days before, and you just need to be prepared to demonstrate all of the stuff since the last time we had a discussion. If it's the first check, then you need to demonstrate me everything you've done up to that point. So there will be no exceptions. A missed meeting will cost you your marks for that progress check. So 2 out of 36 can be pretty costly, right? That's basically 1/18 of your mark. So when you're all done, if your project requires any special instructions, make sure you include like a README file inside of your project folder and tell me exactly what needs to happen. Maybe I need to install a font, maybe I need to make sure I'm using a certain version of some kind of software or whatnot. Give me the README file so I can actually run your project. Documentation. So there are 2 extra, well, there's your basic documentation that you're always expected to have. Each group member will be responsible for documenting all their own pieces. However, of course, there will be some communal code, and that communal code must be documented, and that will work against everybody if that is not documented in a clean way. So make sure that the communal code is documented effectively. Other than that, you're marked individually on your documentation, and make sure you do a good job. So there's a second piece, which is a physical game manual. I've given you a link here to an example one. I think it's for Super Mario World, if my memory serves me correctly. And basically your game needs a game manual, including like the cover art, your table of contents, and it's going to be a physical one. You're going to physically print it out, and you're going to have it with you on our demonstration day, which leads me into our next piece. Demonstration days. So the day following the due date, our class is going to have their very own E3 day. If you don't know what E3 is, it's the biggest video game convention in the world, held in San Diego? No, LA, I think. I can't recall. Maybe even San Francisco. Whatever. California somewhere. Anyways, so it's held once a year. It's usually in June. And it's a massive conference. So we're going to do our own little E3, which is basically every group is going to set up their own booth of 1 to 3 computers, and that booth is going to be set up to demonstrate their game. You're going to have your manual there sitting beside you, and you're also going to have a banner, a simple 8.5 by 11 booth banner that advertises both your company name as well as your game name. Now don't just write it in pen. Again, it needs to be a professional looking product. Don't spend hours on it. Spend about a half an hour at most. Put some nice artwork, maybe a couple screenshots on it, that kind of thing. Nicely cleanly laid out, and that just stick it on the wall behind your booth so I can see it when I come up to the computer, and I'll check out your manual at the same time. So that stuff needs to be there. And then you're going to take this time, at this point when I come over to your group, you're going to demonstrate to me your game. And this is where I do the superficial marking of your mechanics and the overall polish and that kind of thing. So it's going to be a quick check looking at what's there, what you promised, what's missing, that kind of thing. So you're only going to have 5 minutes at most to do this in the crowded classes, in the regular class, especially in the grade 10 and the grade 11. At most, because we got to get through everybody in the class, and sometimes it may even take 2 periods to do this, depending on how full the class is. But you're only going to have 5 minutes at most to demonstrate everything. If you can't demonstrate it, you can't get credit for it. So make sure you organize yourself in a way that you can actually demonstrate all your mechanics that you've promised, and the overall gameplay itself. I don't expect you to play through the entire game in 5 minutes, but I do expect you to demonstrate the whole aspect of it, what makes it fun, what makes the game interesting and unique, that kind of stuff, as well as the mechanics themselves. So the only exception to this 5-minute rule is in the grade 12 class where we have groups. If there's a large group of like 4 people or whatnot, they may have more mechanics to demonstrate because the project itself is going to be physically bigger. If that's the case, we'll award up to an extra 3 minutes at most in order to fully demonstrate everything. And then we have to move on to the next group because, again, we are limited in time. So, again, make sure that you are set up to do this. It may involve you putting in some backdoors like cheat codes and stuff like that to get to certain points in the game in order to demonstrate certain mechanics. Maybe you have like water levels, so you want to show me your swimming mechanic, but it's like the 5th level in the game. So I don't expect you to play through all four of the first levels to get there. I expect you to put in something to allow us to just jump to the level so you can demonstrate that mechanic to me. Don't waste time. Grading. So let's just quickly go over this. This is a little bit different. So this is a different grade mechanism than the design section. So this one, it's broken down into 5 components. The first is the progress checks. 6 out of 36 marks, or 16.5%. That's a lot. So if you miss your progress checks, that's expensive. Your support material, so your game manual and your booth banner, 4 marks, total of 11%. Very easy marks. Everybody should get perfect on that. Documentation and style. This is an individual component. You notice how they're all set up. So your progress checks are individual. The support materials are a group mark. The individual documentation and style, again, 6 out of 36, or 16.5%. Game mechanics and technical concepts. This is an individual as well. So everything you were assigned in that priority list, did you get it done? All right, did you do it effectively? So this is a subjective mark on your assigned completed task, and this is 10 out of 36 marks, or 28% of your grade. Okay, and then finally a group mark of overall game polish. Again, 28%, 10 out of 36 marks. So how complete is the game? How professional does it feel? How successful would it be? Okay, so marks will be deducted in this section if you have communal code that's undocumented, since that is part of the polish. Okay, so that's the whole thing. You add that up, you're going to get 100%, and hopefully everybody does well. The documentation needs to be clean, clear, concise, placed properly, effective. Your spacing needs to be set up appropriately. Code's all blocked up properly. Comments are above the code, not beside. Everything is laid out the way it should be. Make sure you're using subprograms effectively for both readability and reusability. I should never ever see a subprogram that has hundreds of lines of code. That shouldn't happen. That should be broken down into smaller subprograms that are doing individual tasks. Remember, a subprogram does one task. So if requested, I will do my best to describe any subjective marks, but remember they are subjective. So at the end of the day, if you tell me that you think the interface is easy to use, but I disagree with you, unfortunately, you're going to lose that argument, because it is a subjective thing, and it's my opinion at that point. It is a professional opinion. It's not a biased opinion in any way, shape, or form. It's based on what you produced. I want to go over this and make sure I highlight this in detail. As I said before, make sure you choose your groups effectively. There's a major component that is part of the group marks, so you have your 10 marks for your overall game polish, but you also have like your support material, so you're looking at 16 marks there that are 16 out of 36 marks, which represent 39% of your grade is a group mark. Well, that's a fair portion, right? That's a fair portion indeed. So if you're not comfortable with this risk, work on your own. Stop what you're doing, work on your own. Exceptions won't be made. You can't come up to me and argue with me after the fact. That's it. So make sure that you choose your group wisely. I'm not trying to be harsh, but you're going to work environments all throughout your whole life where you're not going to get along with the people, or you're going to be working with ineffective coworkers. That's part of it. All right, so get around it, solve the problem. If you're in a group, this is a kind of like a reward. Now, once in a while, we get projects where there's a really outstanding shining star in a group who did some absolutely phenomenal things. Well, this is where they get their just desserts. So at the end of the project, each group member will cast a ballot, and it will be a secret ballot, so nobody's going to know who voted for who, for a team MVP. If a single person receives more than 50% of the team votes, so if it's a 2-person team, that means both people need to vote for the same person, and let me be clear about this, and the teacher sees this is not a clear engineering of votes for ulterior motives, you're just not trying to jack somebody's grade, boosting is not allowed for all you gamers out there, I will have the final say. No, you can't try and argue with me about it. If I don't agree with your motives behind it, no bonuses will be awarded. However, if it is honest and everybody voted cleanly, that person, he or she, will be awarded a bonus of 10% on their ISU. And that's capable of getting a mark above 100% on the ISU. So they could potentially get, out of 36, so another 3.6 marks, they could get 39.6 out of 36 on their ISU, which actually adds up to about 2 full % on their final grade. That's pretty significant. If you're that person. Again, it's got to be legitimate, and I'll know because I'm watching you every single day in class, and I know how you're operating. Maybe that person is the MVP because of their leadership. They kept people going. They kept people motivated and on track and on pace. It's up to you as a group to decide who that MVP is. And if you don't have a clear MVP, unfortunately, no bonus marks are awarded because it needs to be clear and unanimous. So that's everything there. Your deliverables, again, for your final project. So the complete functional project on the course website. If you can't fit it all in there because it's too big, we're going to be submitting on Google Drive, so it should take files above 1 gigabyte anyway. But just in case, you could always upload it to Dropbox and then just submit a link. Make sure your program is documented. Make sure any test or unused or commented out code is gone. I don't want to see the code. The only exception to this is if you are in charge of a certain mechanic and you did a lot of coding for it but you couldn't get it working and it was breaking the game, comment that out and put a comment above that states what you're trying to do. That way I can find it. You won't be deducted marks based on that code existing in the program, and you may earn credit or partial credit for the mechanic that you're trying to implement or the concept. Program executes without crashing at any point. Make sure I can run your program and it won't crash on me. A README file, if needed, that tells me extra things that I need to get set up in order to run your product. A game manual, a physical game manual, not a digital game manual, a physical game manual, and it'll be marked on site on the presentation day during your presentation, and as well as your booth banner. Sorry, that should be on there as well, your booth banner as well. Make sure that your E3 demonstration is planned to adequately show off the gameplay and mechanics in less than 5 minutes. So plan that out. It doesn't have to be everybody talking. It could be one person leading the show. That's fine. You're not being marked on the presentation itself. You're just being marked on the product that you're showing me, not your presentation. It's not an oral presentation in any way, shape, or form. You're just demonstrating. There'll be nobody else around. You'll only be demonstrating to me. Everybody else will be off playing other games. So that is your ISU. I'd say in a nutshell, but this is an 18-minute video. So if you have any questions, contact your teacher to clarify anything. Again, proofread and make sure you're very clear on what your expectations are.